Holy crap, you guys, we're doing another tier list. It's so exciting. This is going to be so fun. There will be no drama in it all. We're going to do an overrated, underrated tier list. It's not like a normal character tier list. I just want to specify this is if I think they are rated, overrated, underrated, or fairly rated. Obviously, this is my opinion. This is not like the official OddNationCartoons opinion or anything like that. I'm not currently affiliated with OddNationCartoons. I'm not working on DC4. I'm on a leave of absence, so don't think that this is like any official capacity. It's not. It's just my opinion. If you disagree, that's okay. Leave a comment below. Try to be respectful. No passive aggression. You know, everyone's opinion is valid. And if you disagree, that's completely fine. I'm okay with that. We're all allowed to have different opinions. I don't usually do this because I like to look at characters as a whole rather than their specific iterations in, you know, DC1, DC All-Stars, DC2, or even the beta. You know, because I like to think that there are a lot of characters where if you look at, let's say, DC1 and DC All-Stars, it's kind of crap, but then when you combine it together, you see the full picture, it's like, oh, that's beautiful, right? There are a lot of characters like that, especially DC2. DC2 especially, because I think that the iterations between DC2 and DC All-Stars, it's like night and day. So, yeah, I don't usually do this other than for tier lists. I try to view characters as the full picture, but for this tier list, we won't. We will be looking specifically at each individual season. So this should be a lot of fun. I don't know, I think that's everything I want to say. This will probably be posted on social media, and people will not have context, and they'll be mad at me. They'll be like, oh, what the heck, why is DC1 Gabby in underrated? Why, what the heck? And they'll be like, watch the video if you want my explanation. I'll try not to take too long, because there are a lot of characters, and I tend to ramble. But without further ado, let's start. Dan, I think he is fairly rated. I don't think anyone that's actually, like, competent really cares about Beta Dan. I think a lot of people are like, yeah, he's a joke, he has 6 lines, he's not important. If you want to put him in your Super Smash Bros. Fanfic, that's fine, you know? If he's like your self-insert for Super Smash Bros. Fanfic, go for it. You know, he has 6 lines, doesn't really do much, he's just kind of a filler boot. Yeah, it's fairly rated. I don't think anyone is vouching for him or hating him. It's fine. Beta Will, I think Beta Will is fairly rated. I don't think anyone cares about him. He's just kind of there for Fury to boot someone, you know, typical, you know, I'm afraid of stuff guy, kind of classic, old, you know, late 2000s total drama fanfic trope. Kind of meh, but yeah, fairly rated. I don't think anyone's really hating or loving this guy. Beta Gabby. I think Beta Gabby is slightly overrated. I think that it's interesting because not a lot of the characters in the beta really, you know, no one really cares about the beta, but for the most part, I do remember back in the day that the beta, like, people were really vouching for Beta Gabby. She only lasts like 3 episodes, but a lot of people quite liked her, what she showed in those 3 episodes. What she showed was the something that I think should stay behind in the early 2010s. You know, DID representation. I don't have DID. I can't say for certain, but I don't think it's great. I think it's to the level of, I don't think it's to the level of like Mal or Toko Fukawa, but I think that having like that, you know, that Green Goblin evil second side is, you know, it's conceptually cool, but I do think that it belongs in like 2011. I think DC Beta releasing in 2021 was really late for that archetype, you know, to still exist. But yeah, no, I mean, again, she had 3 episodes. She was cool. I liked what she showed relative to the beta, because I did not like the beta. But yeah, slightly overrated. It's funny how, because people liked her in the beta, they gave her a lot more screen time in DC1, and then a lot of people complained. We'll get to that when we get to that, but a lot of people complained about Gabby in DC1, so she had less screen time in the beginning of DC All-Stars. It's endless loop, and then people are mad. They're like, why did she get so little screen time? It's like, it's an endless loop. People liking Gabby and people hating Gabby, so I don't know. Beta Ashley, I think she's fairly rated. I know a lot of people don't like her design. She never really says anything cowgirl-ish, and she doesn't need to, but yeah, she's just kind of there. She's one of those characters that's just kind of there. Beta Lil is a little overrated, in my opinion. I think a lot of people liked her conceptually. It's a cool concept, and that's something that I want to get out of the way early on. I know a lot of people, they look at these characters, they like to look at the potential as to what they can provide to a future story, or, oh, this character was doing this because of, you know, speculation and all that stuff. I try not to do that. I try to grade characters based on what is objective in the show, what we see in the show. You know, I'm not saying, like, you can't have any headcanons or anything like that, but I try not to be like, oh, you know, Drew is a great character, he has so much potential, he could be, like, the secret villain, and he's perfect for my fanfic, he's gonna be the second placer in my total drama featuring 57 characters fanfiction. It's like, you can do that. Like, that's fine, but I don't think that's, like, a fair way to grade things based on potential. I want to grade it for what I see and not what I want to see, I guess. But yeah, I think Lil's a little overrated. A lot of people say like she's the shining star of the first few episodes, and yeah, she gets like a good amount of confessionals in the first few episodes. But it's like, oh, I'm the scoutmaster. Yes, this is like my girls back in the scouts. Yes. Very like stereotypical dialogue. That's like it's good for a caricature of a character, and some people like that. That's fine. But I don't know. It's not a lot of like character-driven dialogue. It's more so like you're a Danganronpa character. What is the first like 4 sentences you would say to represent your archetype? And that's what I think Lil does in a few episodes. It's weird. She gets like a lot of screen time despite not having a really big role in DC Beta. I guess she makes merge, which is cool. But yeah, Miriam is I think she is underrated because her English voice actor in the one episode was really funny. I don't know. She has like kind of a normal arc where it's like she's grumpy and then she meets people and then she's nice again, and you know that's nice. Those are nice arcs. It's a bit quick, but like you know, I think for being one of the characters that isn't entirely a caricature or bland or filler or an old trope, it's like okay. I like the subversion where it's like grumpy lady and she's like, no, you know, I like you, Tom and Jake, you're cool. Tom is super overrated. Tom and Jake, they were crazy on TikTok back in 2021. People really like this stuff. They were like the faces of OddNationCartoons for a while for the beta, and it's like, why? Tom here really reminds me of a certain self-insert from a 14-year-old Total Drama fanfic comic, where it's like, oh, he's so cool, look at him, he's like the coolest guy ever. He doesn't really do a whole lot. In fact, I would say that the Tom Jake of the beta is extremely toxic. Like a lot of people are like, no, Tom Jake is toxic. I'm like, compared to the beta? I mean, look, they have their issues, but they're nowhere near as toxic as they are in the beta. The beta is insane. And maybe they were setting up a future season for them, maybe. But at this point in time where the beta only exists in a vacuum as one season, it's like, no. And like, that's how I also like to view things. Not so much in a vacuum, but also like how these characters eventually evolve and how their perceptions evolve. Something that I like to say a lot is that Rosa in DC2 was a very hated character for a long portion of her time in the show. It was only like a little after episode 10 or 11, which is very late in the season, that's like 10 months into the season, that people started to vouch for her. Now a lot of people really like Rosa. It's like that, wow, it's crazy, because her perception really drastically evolved. That's just the thing for most of these shows. You just give it time and things will really change based on the, you know, based on the current content or the, you know, it's weird to say, but the community culture at the time. So yeah, Tom's extremely overrated, holy crap. Gret, I'm gonna say Gret is like slightly overrated. Like I'm gonna say very overrated. Like she has a personality in the beta. That's great. Like that's something that a lot of characters don't have. But the personality that we're given is like let's just have someone who's smarmy. Let's give them like a small backstory. But for the most part, it's just you know, let's get our Heather without having the, it's weird to say, but the nuance and the slow setup of Heather, right? We'll just do it immediately because we gotta rush and we gotta have a villain and like boom, people know what Heather is, people will know Gret is. Boom, it's the same thing. It's like no, you gotta slow it down a little bit. Like I think DC1 Gret is like a much better speed for that character. But yeah, no, very overrated. Nick is this is gonna be really weird to say. This is gonna be extremely weird to say, but Nick is very overrated. I remember a group of people really liked Nick because like the joke is funny that no one cares about him, and it's like the joke happens like maybe twice, and it's like you can tell it's like they genuinely forgot about him. It's not like funny. It's like, why didn't you develop this guy? Come on, he's lasted so long over all these other characters. It's a little annoying. It's one of those jokes where it's like if that was the intention of the joke to just make fun of him, then that would be kind of funny. But to me, it feels like they genuinely just forgot about him and threw it in just like as a little band-aid, and it's like, it's not funny. And it's like, you know, him outlasting the rest of his crew is conceptually cool. I like that. Him outlasting Lil and Will and Ashley and all that stuff, which I don't even think existed in the beta. Except like that's not really a thing. That's like, again, that's like a fanfic concept. He doesn't really express that. I don't even think he's really friends with him. It just doesn't exist. So it's like, yeah, it's weird to say. I'm basing this off of the very, very small amount of knowledge we know of people's reception to the beta, because no one really talks about it anymore. I want to judge each of these characters as we get into the actual DC based on the current day. Like October 23 is the day I'm recording this. October 23, 2024. Obviously, things might change. Maybe I'll put like Carol in like extremely like overrated, and then like eventually it'll change to underrated. I don't know. Time always changes. Jake is also extremely overrated. I think like a lot of people didn't realize how toxic he was. Like he was just the most toxic character ever, and yet people were like, "Oh my God, Tom and Jake, they're so cute. They're so cute together." And it's like, unlike DC1 and DC All-Stars, where I feel like Jake at least learns lessons and he grows from it, here in the beta, I don't think he learned at all. I don't think he learned a thing. I think he doubled down. In fact, he was just a little piece of shit the whole time, and he gets rewarded with a boyfriend. I don't know. Like, okay, I will put him in a very overrated just because I do remember that a relative amount of people remember Jake's iteration in the beta, more so than Tom at least. But yeah, I'm gonna say very overrated. Time has changed, of course. Fiore is also someone who I think, when you ask someone, who is your favorite character of the beta, 9 times out of 10, especially back in 2021, it would be Fiore. And it's kind of like, yeah, no shit, she's the only character. I guess Grit is like half a character, because she's copying from Heather, like pretty much beat for beat. But, yeah, I think Fiore is fairly rated. It's like, people love her, but also, it's like, she's the only character. She's the only character in the show. Ellie, where'd I put Ellie? I think Ellie, I think she's slightly overrated in the beta. Like, you watch Beta Ellie, and it does not have anywhere near the amount of stuff you get from DC1 Ellie. DC1 Ellie is a completely different character, and I think that's awesome for DC1 Ellie, but this Ellie is just, she's kind of there. I feel like she makes some of the game moves and decisions that DC1 Ellie would eventually make, but at the same time, it's like, you don't ever see her thought process, she's just kind of vibing the whole time. Like, she never has, like, a reflective moment. Gabby's eliminated really early, so it's like, you don't really get to see that grow. Relationship with Jake is kind of tested, but it's not really a thing, because the season is so rushed anyway. It's like, I don't know, slightly overrated. I feel like people's positive emotions on this Ellie is like, you know, that's just because they like the future Ellie. Anyway, we're on to the actual show. Sorry about that. That was a little tangent of the beta. Now we're in the actual show. Will, I think, is fairly rated. I don't think he gets, like, a small amount of love. I don't think, like, he gets hate. At least I don't think so. There's nothing to really hate about him. And, like, he's lovable in his few episodes of screen time. So I'm going to say fairly rated there. Drew was very overrated back in the day. Back in, like, when the season was airing, he was extremely overrated. Like, holy crap. Drew was just... Oh my god, he got eliminated. There was, like, a lot of wars breaking out. And, like, literally, like, 4 weeks later, people are like, we don't give a shit about Drew. He was just a character that existed in the ethos. And, like, I get it, because he's, like, the new guy. You think that the new characters will last long, and then this one doesn't. But, I mean, I don't know. I think he's fairly rated now. He has his critics. He has his fans. He has his critics. I think it's all fair. I think you can put him. I get it. He's, like, cute. The sound effects are great. It's a great novel concept. But if you were to put him high in your tier list, a lot of people would be like, what the heck? That's weird. But at the same time, it's like, it's valid. Like, all these opinions are valid. But, yeah. I think Drew's fairly rated. Nick, I think Nick is underrated. I'm gonna be honest. I think, like, I know there's some people out there on the internet, namely a certain Corsa Corps, who really love Nick, but I think Nick's underrated. I think that, in his little amount of screen time, he gets a lot of love. He's a very funny guy. Conceptually, it's fun. He's the one who takes down the alliance of all, you know, Fiore. Fiore manipulates him to take down his own alliance. It's great. It's great stuff. I think that there's a lot of depth going on. I'm not gonna, you know, judge Rich Nitch either, because that's, like, not canon. But, yeah, it's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun. I think he's slightly underrated. I don't think he's very underrated. He's slightly underrated. I think he has a few great fans who see the potential in him, I guess. And in his limited screen time, regardless, he's just great. Lil, I would say slightly overrated. I'm going to say slightly overrated. I know that there was a lot of backlash that Ashley made it to All-Stars and not Lil, but at the same time, it's like, one, Ashley emotes more. Like, Lil's just kind of nice, and it's like, I get it, conceptually, maybe not conceptually, but people are more prone to liking the nice characters, but at the same time, it's like, this is like a drama show. You know, if you want nice characters, watch a sitcom. They don't really have a place because they don't really drive conflict. I know conflict can be annoying. I get that fighting can be annoying, but that's just the kind of show we're doing. Reality shows have a lot of fighting, have a lot of beef, and just drama, and really petty stuff. It's like, Lil can't really do that. I know you could be like, oh, you could write it so that Lil has drama and beef, and you could do that. That's totally fine, but it's like, I don't know. She's nice, she's motherly, her voice is great, but I think she's slightly overrated. I like her now. Like, if you asked me, like, maybe a few months ago, I would say extremely overrated, but now I'm like, okay, I don't think anyone's, like, seriously vouching for her other than, like, you know, she's nice and, like, motherly and stuff, and people like MILFs. But, yeah, Ashley, DC1 Ashley, I think DC1 Ashley is fairly rated. I think a lot of people will go, oh, she only has 5 episodes, but I think, you know, she's always rated in a vacuum in regards to those 5 episodes. I think she has a lot of critics too, so it all balances out. A lot of fans, a lot of critics. It's all fair in the end. I'm trying to think. DC1 Ashley. I think like she gets characterization moments, right, with Fiore and, you know, Mama didn't raise a quitter and all that stuff. That's like, it's small. Don't get me wrong, it is small, but it's more than Lil. So I think that there is justification for putting her fairly rated compared to Lil. Dan, on the other hand, I think, this is like gonna be weird, but I think he's slightly overrated. I know a lot, again, it's the same argument with Lil, like he's the nice, quiet guy, and people like that, maybe some people see themselves in Dan. It's kind of weird, but I get it. We all insert ourselves in whoever we get attached to, and that's fine. Like, I don't know, I think a lot of people want him back, and it's like, if we want a blank, well, firstly, if we want a blank slate character, we did that with Allie already, but, I don't know, I feel like at that point, just make a new character. He served his purpose well. He is, like, cute, thanks to Genesis. I love Genesis' voice actor, his voicing skills for Dan. But, I don't know. I mean, he does get a lot of hate, but at the same time, he gets a lot of love, and I don't think the love is nearly as warranted. Gabby, on the other hand, I'm trying to think about Gabby. DC1 Gabby, as I alluded to earlier, I think she is underrated. Maybe not very underrated. I'm gonna say very underrated, and, like, hear me out. I am, okay, because the fandom is always evolving, when you talk about DC1 iterations, which no one really does, I think a good amount of people like to view them, you know, as a whole rather than each individual iterations, but for the people that do, I remember back in 2023, when the episodes were airing, Gabby got so much hate. Like, Gabby, people said that she has a suffocating presence, she takes way too much screen time, and all that stuff, and it was like, a lot of those comments, either the people that made those comments, like, left a long time ago, or, you know, a lot of people who did like Gabby only started to be more extroverted later on, right? But at that point in time, I do think that DC1 Gabby, people look back in hindsight and they're like, you know, DC1 Gabby was great. There was a lot of stuff going on there, and yeah, she gets a lot of screen time, but at the same time, it's like, it's good screen time. She's a funny character. I don't know, I think she's very underrated. I still remember, she had, like, mountains of hate. That's actually, again, that's why, well, okay, I can't confirm that, but I'm like 90% sure that's why she got a little amount of screen time in the first act, the first 7 episodes of DC All-Stars, because of the sheer amount of hatred that she got. Gret, on the other hand, DC1 Gret, I'm gonna say, this is gonna be weird, I think, like, she's slightly underrated. I'm trying my best not to look too much into the past, but back then, DC1 Gret, there was a lot of hate thrown about her, a lot of unnecessary weight comments, and, like, you look back and you're like, there was a lot of haters for Gret at the time, and yeah, she's like a mean character, I get that, but a lot of, like, unnecessary comments about her appearance, which, you know, played a role in her iteration in DC All-Stars, for example, dealing with that unnecessary hate. I think DC1 Gret is, oh wait, did I put her in overrated? Oh crap, I'm gonna get canceled for that one. No, you know what, no, I'm gonna double down, I'm gonna put her in slightly overrated. That being said, I do think that while she is cool to have, like, a secondary or even tertiary villain, if you think Alec is the secondary villain, I do think that it was, like, a good beginning to her story. I think DC All-Stars really continued it. You know, she, like, stands up for herself, but it's like, she doesn't really stand up to her parents. It's like through a screen, I guess. It's like through proxy with Alec and Fiore, and it's like, you know, it's fine. I personally don't relate to Gret, but that's not like a factor in whether or not I care about a character. I can still sympathize with Gret, and I sympathize with Gret in DC All-Stars, definitely, when you look at the bigger picture, but I think, you know, solely DC1, I'm like, I think she's a little overrated. Emer might disagree, because I know Gret got a lot of hate, but I do think that she also got a lot of fans in DC1. I do know that she exploded in popularity around DC All-Stars, though. Tom, I think Tom is slightly overrated, just a little. I think when people look at Tom, they look at Tom at the last 3 episodes of DC1 before his elimination, episodes 8, 9, and 10. He's great there. But I do recall back then a lot of people would criticize the first 7 episodes and be like, he's really boring, he's just wearing a mask, he's like this, oh, I'm totally cool, guys, I'm a big mystery man, and they don't know a lot about him, he's very stoic and all that. And around that time, he starts being fun, around episode 8, 9, 10. And that carries on for the rest of the series. But, yeah, I think, like, it's slow at first, and for a while, he's just kind of there. But around that episode 8, he becomes a really great character. I'm gonna say slightly overrated, because I think a lot of people kind of discount his first couple of episodes as being kind of like, meh. I feel like they could have used that a bit better. Well, okay, I say they, I helped proofread it, but we could have helped adjust him just a little bit. Jake, on the other hand, I think is fair. And that might shock people, but a lot of people hate Jake, and a lot of people like Jake, so I think it's fair. I think it's like a 50-50 split, right? That's fair, right? He gets a lot of love, but he also gets a lot of hate. So, fairly rated. Both back then and now, I think that DC1 Jake still gets a lot of hate and a lot of love. Alec? I'm gonna say Alec is underrated. I know that, again, when DC1 was airing, a lot of people did not like Alec. Because he kept on like leaving conversations early, and he was just kind of a sad light character, and there just wasn't a lot to him. I think that take is just wrong. Like, there's just a lot of stuff with his parents, not with his parents, sorry, with him being a parent, with Fiore and all that, and just like Ellie and the team dynamics and how he eventually learns to get mad at Fiore, which a lot of people didn't like, but obviously he was always setting up All Stars. Yeah, I think he was always underrated. Like, a lot of people liked him because he's sexy, but at the same time, it's like there's a lot of character there that I think people tend to neglect in DC1. He's great. Ellie is fairly rated. Nowadays, she's fairly rated. I think back then, right, 2023, when the show was airing, extremely underrated. People did not like Ellie, thought she was boring, thought that her choices were, like, okay. And, like, now there are a lot of people with Ellie profile pics and all that. But, I think it all evens out. I think that there is a lot of hype about the moral ambiguity of the character that a lot of people like, and I think it's all fair. I wish that, these comments existed back in 2023. That would have helped a lot, but, as of the present day, Ellie fairly rated. I think that there's a lot to like about the character, and I think it's all fair. Fiore is... I think Fiore's overrated. Like, I don't think she's very overrated. I think she's only slightly overrated. Like, she is very iconic. Again, it's like the evil child who does, like, badass stuff and has awesome strategy, and she's friends with, like, this older dude, and it's great. Like, don't get me wrong, it is great, but at the same time, it's like, I always felt that Fiore is kind of like this weird disconnect with the show, where a lot of people like how it's more, morally and ethically situational, and there's a lot of, like, side versus side, which side is correct, and then at the same time, you have this evil child. Like, people always cite, like, oh, Naina's an evil puppet, like, your suspension of disbelief is always out the window anyway, and that's fair, but, I don't know, I feel like DC1 is a lot more grounded than DC2. DC2 is still, like, kind of in that, we're still trying to be told drama. DC1 is separating itself, and I think having, like, the evil child is kind of like the weird artifact of it all. That being said, she's a great character, don't get me wrong. I just think she's, like, slightly overrated. And when I mean slightly. People tend to misinterpret what I mean by slightly. By slightly, I mean, like, maybe, like, 1, 2, 3, 4% overrated. Just, like, slightly above the, above or below the, what I would assume the norm is. But yeah, no, Fiore's a great character, don't get me wrong. Miriam is very underrated, I would say. And I think that around the time of DC All-Stars is when, especially those first few episodes, was when people really started to look at Miriam and be like, you know what? I think she's great. I think she's a great character. I think she deserved that win and all that. Again, when DC1 was airing, that was not the case at all. A lot of people really did not like Miriam, especially her winning. They thought it was like, oh, she's such a fillery character. I know the Miriam Miracle was a thing, but at the same time, on the other side, you would see people be like, oh, that wasn't set up at all. She just kind of won out of the blue. She didn't deserve it. And, like, again, All-Stars helped a lot, but even in a vacuum, I do think DC1 Miriam is very underrated. She's a great character. Here is my list so far. Sorry about having to look back at the past for a lot of DC1, because, wow, it's... People tend to talk about DC2 iterations versus DC All-Stars iterations of the DC2 characters. The DC1 characters, by comparison, are a lot more consistent, I'd say, because that's when the writing philosophies really evolved, I guess. So it's no one really talks about the DC1 characters in a vacuum, but the DC2 characters in a vacuum, people love to talk about it because DC2 hits that nostalgia for a lot of people who just want the show to be total drama, but edgy, and they say the fuck word and stuff. Anyway, Oliver. Oliver is... I think Oliver's extremely overrated, and, like, I know that's very extreme. That's, like, literally, only Beta Tom is in that category at the moment, but hear me out. A lot of people really like Oliver. I don't know what he brought to the story. Okay, I think nowadays, if you ask someone, where would you put DC2 Oliver, they would probably be like, oh, he's fine. And I'm gonna say this a lot of people just don't remember DC2. Even neglecting the fact, even erasing the fact that I had to spend, like, me and the other fans had to spend, like, 10 months waiting for the season to end. Oliver just kind of exists. He's just kind of there, and a lot of people really like that. Oh, he's like an intern. That's a cool concept, but they don't do anything with the concept. He's not really used as a you know, connective tissue for Crystal and her dad or anything like that. He's just a nice guy. That could be Rosa, that could be Lake, that could be any other character could have fit that niche. And it's like, we learned nothing about Oliver except that he was there in previous seasons. He's like kind of like comic relief in a weirdly main character role. I think he's extremely overrated. Like, is he funny? Like, it's not really funny. He's just kind of a dork that takes screen time away from people that deserve it. Yeah, Kai... Oh, I'm gonna be so biased here. I think Kai is... If I put him in, like, underrated, am I biased? I'm definitely biased. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna put him in slightly underrated. I think that, like, especially for a DC2 character, having, like, a 3-episode arc where, you know, he's just there, and then he stands up for Maggie, tells Yule to fuck himself, that's great. You know, that's you know, it's an arc. That's... Not a lot of DC2 characters can say that in DC2. I don't know. He has a good amount of fans considering how low his screen time though. Does that constitute like fairly rated or even overrated? I don't know. I'm gonna say underrated. I'm gonna say fairly rated. I think that's better. I think Kai, yeah, it's fair. Connor, on the other hand, I think Connor is slightly underrated. I'm gonna say very underrated even, because he's not an aesthetic. When you look at characters like Kai, or Yule, or Tess, or Lake, or Allie, or Hunter, or Aiden, or James, or Rhea, they are aesthetics. They are something that's like, ooh, I want to post about them. You don't really want to post about Connor, because he's an old cringe man, I get that. But when you look at DC2 with a keen eye, with a different lens, you're like, oh, he's like one of the only characters that actually like talks to people. He has like, you know, we get to see his perspective on the story, on Rhea, on Hunter, on Kai, on Yule, kind of, on Allie, not really, that one might be a stretch, but yeah, and it's like, we don't really get that for other characters. They just kind of exist in a vacuum of standaloneness where they just kind of exist and wait for their... I don't want to say wait for their plots to happen, but that's kind of true. And some of them aren't even important in their own plots. It's ridiculous. Connor, like, yeah, he gets his stuff off screen. Between episodes 2 and 3, he goes through a, oh my god, I'm an old man, I should stop acting like a kid. We never see him acting like a kid, nor do we ever see him have his epiphany. But at the same time, it's like, why is he an All-Stars? It's because he's like the one character that like actually does stuff. And it's like, yeah, he quits, but like, who actually gives a shit about that? Like, it's a fucking fictional show. Just like, use your imagination. And that's not a great response, but it's like, if he was a real person, yeah, don't bring a quitter. But it's like, it's a fucking fictional show. It's like, who cares? He's not gonna quit again. And then he did quit again, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I don't know. I think that like for being like this fatherly figure and being like this one character in DC2 who actually. We get to see his person. He gets more personality in 3 episodes than we do James, Hunter, Aiden, Allie, Tess, like even Lake. And if you don't see that, then you're probably kidding yourself. You probably just like these other characters for their aesthetic, which is fine. But yeah, no, I think he's underrated in DC2. Maggie's interesting because there were a lot of people who were really violent about Maggie being done dirty, and I agree, she was done dirty. But I don't know. I'm gonna say fairly rated. People tend not to like her. They say, like, that, you know, they're like, yeah, she's kind of, like, wasted character, she gets done dirty in her elimination episode, she doesn't do a lot, she's just there for, like, oh, look, pity me, and all that. I think it's all fair. I think it's all fair game. Yule! Oh, man. Oh, man, oh, man. Where do I put Yule? Do I put him in slightly... I'm gonna put Yule in slightly overrated. A lot of people like to think that he's, like, this, you know, this genius, strategist who got done dirty because a certain person wrote the middle episodes of DC2. And I kind of agree, but I also kind of disagree. I don't think, like, he was, like, I think he was, oh god, I hate this word, he was derailed, but the derailment was not as extreme as people make it out to be, because the derailment was, like, closer to the norm than you'd think, I guess. I don't know. He's slightly overrated. Like, he's, like, cool villain, but also he's, like, a cartoon villain. He just spouts, like, racist, homophobic stuff, and just, like, you know, and I don't know, like, in episodes 1, 2, 3, it's more nice because he's more subtle, at least, but it's still cartoony, and I get it, it's a cartoon, but, like, you know, I don't know, man. I don't know, slightly overrated. DC2 Tess is so overrated. I'm not gonna put extremely overrated, but a lot of people nowadays tend to think that DC2 Tess is, like, the greatest character ever made. I'm like, watch DC2 again. Like, please, just watch DC2, but remove the fact that she's, like, this cool goth aesthetic away. It's like, no, she is... A lot of people at the time, and even now, really don't like how she represented depression. It wasn't great. There wasn't a great representation of depression. She doesn't have any real characterization moments. It's mostly about Hunter. It's like, there's that scene where she, like, cries, but it's never really expanded on. There's this scene where she and Allie are in a cave. That's never really expanded on. It's like, she feels like a satellite character, which is really weird because, you know, she's, like, in the campfire couple, but it's like, yeah, DC2 Tess is, like, I feel like whenever, like, DC2 Tess is the one take where if people say, like, she's a really good character, I'm like, watch DC2 again. Please watch DC2 again. Like, no, she's not. She's not. She gets, like, no screen time in that. Lake is extremely overrated, okay? She's, like, very generic, and it's nice to have, like I said with Kai, like, it's on arc. It is nice to have. It is focused a lot, but it is just so off-screen with characters that we never get to see, and it doesn't really affect the other characters. It feels like it's only, like, Danganronpa free time event where it just kind of happens. And, like, you know, it's like, you know, she's a cool, nice, strong, badass girl. And that's great. But, there's not a lot there. There's really not a lot there. She overcomes adversity in a few episodes, but she never really gets to learn from the other characters, except kind of Crystal, which is cool. I like that the host gets to influence it, but at the same time, I feel like the other characters could have used a bit of that. The other contestants could use a bit of that. Yeah, Lake is overrated. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't understand what people see. Like, how do you move forward with, like, if she came back for, like, DC5, what do people want to see? Do they just want to see her being nice to people? Like, I feel like that's what people don't like about Ashley and Tess and Rosa, right? That's weird. I don't know. Carol, I think Carol is, I think Carol's fairly rated. I think a lot of people don't like Carol. I think that some people see, like, oh, she has some strategy. That's cool. She has some, you know, amount of diversity because, you know, she's so hostile. Like, other than, like, Yule, she's, like, one of the hostile people of DC2. Like, that's cool. I don't know. I think it's fair. I think Carol has, like, a very small amount of fans, and yeah, that's fair. Allie, I'm gonna put Allie in slightly overrated. I'm gonna say this because, you know, nowadays, on the occasion, I see people really parading DC Allie as great. Now, obviously, the meme, thank you, I'm going there, and previously, the meme, Stop There, Lone Ranger, heavily affected Allie's, DC2 Allie's perception with a lot of people. But I do think that, in the grand scheme of things, Allie, you know, Allie is a character that is just nice, is just there, except she has way less substance than even Lake. Why I would say Lake is kind of bland. Allie is even more bland. We don't get a single character moment. She's only ever talking about her grandpa or in her relation to Hunter. She's just taking up screen. Now, I don't hate her as much as someone like Emer or Tam do. Like, she's not that annoying to me, but, like, I remember people saying, like, oh, DC2 Allie, she's so nice and kind, and it's like, you know, she's kind of existing. Rosa, I would put Rosa fairly rated. I don't want to put her in slightly underrated because I do think nowadays she's getting a good amount of love because, like, even though she's a very, like, nice character who, you know, doesn't really affect the story, her backstory is mostly off-screen or implied. We don't, like, get to see how she reacts to other people or how her backstory affects how she treats people. You know, I think she gets a good amount of love, and, you know, this is one where, because she had a lot of hate early on, and now she's getting a good amount of love, I think it's fair. I don't think she's overrated or underrated. I think she's fair. Hunter, on the other hand, DC2 Hunter, at least, I think is... I don't want to... Like, I think Hunter's fair. I think there are a lot of critics for him. I think a lot of people like him because he has the cool aesthetic, but also there are a lot of critics who say, like, all the reasons that I've ranted about for the last, like, 2 years. So that's fair. Yeah, I think people see the positives and the negatives about Hunter, so that's fair. Aiden, on the other hand, DC2 Aiden, I think DC2 Aiden is very overrated. I think both Aidens are a bit overrated, but DC2 Aiden especially. A lot of people apparently really click with him because of the thumbnail and the TikToks, because he has a cool design. But in the actual show, he's kind of bland. He's always been kind of bland, but DC2 Aiden is even more bland. He's really whiny. He doesn't, we don't get to learn a lot about him other than he likes to travel. He's a big meme. But yeah, no, I would say Aiden is very overrated. He's like one of the faces of the fandom, and I'm like, I don't know, Chief. Like, I get it, but, like, I don't know, Chief. Rhea is, I'm gonna put Rhea in slightly underrated, honestly. I think that Rhea in DC2, in episode 10, where she has the I'm acting Rosa moment, was probably the most amount of hate that OddNationCartoons has ever gotten. I don't think that any amount of the DC All-Stars hate, or even DC1 hate, which wasn't that big in hindsight, but will ever eclipse the DC2 Rhea hate. That was massive. Like, I was impressed that by the time DC All-Stars episode 1 came out, the Rhea hate wasn't nearly as bad. I was shocked. Because it was just this massive tidal wave at the time. And I think a lot of people, like, yeah, the criticisms are fair, where it's like, Rhea feels like she just kind of disappears for the middle episodes. But looking back at the first few episodes, it's like, okay, there is stuff going on for Rhea. There's stuff going on for her about her relationship with Connor and, you know, moving to the US and her sister and all that. Like, it exists. It's not like a massive hoax, and I bet you a lot of people don't even remember that. I bet you a lot of people, when DC All-Stars starts talking about the sister, you're like, what is that? Well, I never even heard of that. It's like, no, it existed. It just, you forgot about it because it's not like important. DC2 as a whole is just not a memorable season. But I do think that there was foundation there, and Emer will, you know, defend Rhea to the grave, and I agree. I agree with him. I think that there are things to like about DC2 Rhea, that while there are flaws, there are also things to like. And lastly, for DC2 James, I think James is I'm gonna say extremely overrated. And the reason I say this is because even back then, James was like this big sexy meme character, but we never get to see his perspective. I think like the only time we do is like literally the last 10 minutes of the season in like episode 13 when he talks to Rosa on the boat. That's the only time we ever get to see, you know, his inner thoughts. We don't know like, oh, does he actually like Aiden? Is he tricking Aiden? Is this a good move? Is he doing this on purpose? In fact, I would argue the entire middle part, there's pretty much no James. He's just being a meme guy. Like, when he does the move on Yule, that's like a good start for the character, but I feel like he just kind of vanishes, and the show kind of forgets about him, other than to use him for votes for, like, you know, for no real reason other than, like, I guess he's, like, muscular. I don't know. There's a lot to like about James, because he is sexy and his voice is great, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I wish there was more there. I wish he got more screen. He gets a really low amount of screen time. I like, not as bad as Tess, but it's like, it's really low. When you rewatch the show, it is just, like, from episode 6 to 10, he just barely talks. He's barely relevant. And it's like, I feel like the James following is because he's sexy, and he has a cool voice, and he says funny lines. But it's like, when you look at it from a storytelling standpoint, it's like, considering he's the winner of the season, I feel like we should have given him more. But there you go. Here's my list. I don't think anyone is extremely underrated. We will get to All-Stars in the next video, because I feel like that's going to have a lot of talk, and I feel like this video is long enough as is. So this is part 1. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what your takes are. Hopefully I didn't, hopefully y'all are fine and vibing in the world. But yeah, we'll do All-Stars next time. Let's see what happens.